Welcome to The Reader's Couch, a podcast that brings you lively conversations with some of your favorite authors and bookish personalities. Over here, the couch is always booked, but I've moved some books to the side table and fluffed some cushions so I can welcome a guest or two to come lounge with us. Today on the couch, we have Jayne Allen, an author who wears many hats and whose publishing journey has been quite an interesting one to watch. But she's here with me to talk about her debut novel about a young black woman who must try to overcome an unexpected setback that threatens to bring her picture-perfect life crashing down. Stay tuned. Readers, get ready for cozy reading and all the autumnal feels with the Biblio Lifestyle 2021 Fall Reading List. This year's guide has a total of 42 books organized across 7 categories, so you can head straight to your favorite genres if you prefer. We also have one category that's dedicated to the minimalist reader. And our Minimalist Reads list has 8 titles that we highly recommend if you're only planning to pick up a few reads this fall. In the guide, you'll also find some fun recipes, things to do at home, and tips to improve your reading life. So download your free copy of the guide and see the books that made the list over at bibliolifestyle.com/2021 FRL. That's bibliolifestyle.com/2021 FRL. I'll also include a link in the show notes so you can sign up there. A collection of poetry to keep on your radar is I Hope This Finds You Well by Kate Baer. The author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, What Kind of Woman, returns with a collection of poems created from notes she's received from followers, supporters, and online trolls. At first, the darker messages and vitriol from online trolls crowding Kate's inbox resulted in an immediate delete and block. Until one day, Kate decided to transform the cruelty into art and create fresh and intriguing poems. These pieces, along with ones made from notes of gratitude and love, as well as words from public figures, have now become some of her most beloved work. I Hope This Finds You Well is a book of poetry birthed in the darkness of the internet that now offers light, hope, and empowerment by showing how we too can turn bitterness and what's ugly or painful in our own lives into something beautiful. I Hope This Finds You Well by Kate Baer is being published by Harper Perennial, and books go on sale on November 9th, 2021. So be sure to visit your local bookseller or library so you can get your hands on a copy. Again, it's entitled I Hope This Finds You Well by Kate Baer. Hi readers, welcome again to the Reader's Couch. I'm your host, Victoria Wood, and here on the couch with me is a woman who's worn many hats, okay? She's a Harvard-trained attorney and engineer, plus she's a serial entrepreneur who dabbles in stand-up comedy. But she's here with me to talk about her debut novel, Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. Please welcome to the couch, Jayne Allen. Hey, Jayne.
Hello, Victoria. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm thrilled to have you here. So this is quite interesting because your book debuted before, but now you have another debut again. So I just want to know, how are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10? What's going on? What are your emotions right now?
I am nervous and excited. It's all the things because this is really a dream come true for me. When I originally put Black Girls Must Die Exhausted into the marketplace, I really didn't know what to expect. And early readers came and just gave me incredible support. And then I had the opportunity to really live the dream of working with an editor with the Harper Perennial team, who came in and picked up not just the first book, but the series, the trilogy, and really gave me the opportunity to polish this work and to really love on it and make it the epitome of what I wanted it to be and dream for it and beyond. So I just cannot wait for this edition and for really what the fullness of Black Girls Must Die Exhausted can be. So I just can't wait.
Yay, I'm thrilled to hear it. So I want readers to hear from you, Jayne. Tell us about your novel, Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, and what can readers expect going in?
Well, readers can expect from Black Girls Must Die Exhausted to meet Tabitha Walker, who is a 33-year-old woman. She is a Black woman living in Los Angeles, and she's been living her best life. So it seems to be. And she's been living her checklist life. So she has an enviable career, the career she's always wanted. She's a local television reporter, and she has all of her checklist items underway. She has a partner that she thinks she wants to be with, and she's got great friends. And then all of a sudden we meet her on her worst day, completely unexpected. She has a fertility issue that comes up, a health crisis out of the blue. And so she has to re-examine her whole life from that perspective, because what it does is challenge one of the things that is very important to her, having a family of her own for reasons that we find out in the book, but that she took for granted and wasn't really focused on. And so now she has to shift her focus and all of these things around, and it causes her to really examine her life. And so she realizes in this moment, and as we meet her, that her word that she's been living in the life that she's been crafting is exhausted. And that's not the word that she imagined for herself or that she imagines for herself. So we join with her friends and family and really colorful characters, multi-layered characters who come to her aid as she really tries to reimagine her life and find a journey towards what fulfillment actually is for her. It's kind of girl, gets herself story in a lot of ways, where she's got to figure out what her own happy ending is, regardless of who she's with.
Right, absolutely. So I want to know, Jayne, what inspired you to write Black Girls Must Die Exhausted? I mean, give us some behind the scenes details on your thought process, or just something that happened. I mean, what made you decide to put pen to paper and tell this story?
As a Black woman in the United States, and I thought of this idea, came to me around 2016, I just realized that there were a lot of layers of experience that needed to be unpacked and really made for a unique experience on the outside and the inside, especially once you start to examine it, and really could be something that anybody could learn from. The way that you surmount obstacles and challenges, how you learn to define yourself, in the face of how society would otherwise define you, and all of these things where there was a real opportunity moment to have a distinctive voice for a Black female protagonist. And so that's what I wanted to create in fiction. I wanted to center a Black woman and make her story valid from her perspective and make it relatable to anyone who read it, not just from a Black cultural or experience or societal perspective, but just as a human story. So that was the idea that came to me. I wanted to create something that was a celebration of who Black women become and who we live day by day as, in spite of these challenges, and also create something that ultimately winds up as an inspirational call to adventure and life fulfillment as we watch and travel along with Tabitha as she figures out what fulfillment means for her.
Right. So we have a few reader questions here, and Christine, whose username is @needleinmybookstack on Instagram, she would like to know what inspired you to write about fertility specifically.
So I am 43 years old. I'm single and I have not had children yet. And along this journey in my life, I had to go through fertility treatments to freeze eggs and preserve options for myself. And whether I wind up having children or don't, but just to have that option. And the things that I learned along the way, I started in my very late 30s, and there was so much information that I wish someone had told me, or I wish was part of the regular conversation. And it just, it's kind of a hushed thing. And if you the topic happens to come up with someone, maybe you'll share information between the two of you. But I really wanted and hope that the topic becomes more normalized so that a lot of the issues that we kind of suffer with in silence become something that we can get support from within community. So that was one of the things. It was sort of this hidden world that I discovered that I really wanted to highlight a little bit and say, there's a lot of people dealing with a lot of issues in this space, and we really should normalize this as part of the conversation.
Absolutely. And I mean, when we read these books, we read them with our own experiences, and that shapes how we receive things. And even just for me as a Black woman, infertility is not something, or just fertility options is not something that's spoken about within my space. Obviously, I can't speak for the entire Black community, but just from my experiences, it's not something that is spoken about. And, it was kind of refreshing to see that, unfortunately, Tabitha had a wake-up call due to a diagnosis she received. But just, the option, just to let folks know that the option is there, that we can have these conversations amongst friends. I think we've come a long way, because 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when I was in my early 20s, that would have never happened,
Right, exactly. And I've spoken with groups of readers now, and it's been so heartening for me to hear the conversations that come up in discussions around this book, where I've been in a group of readers where people have disclosed for the first time, even saying it out loud to other people, that they have fertility challenges and that they had never previously felt comfortable even saying it. And to just watch the outpouring of support in community when those disclosures happen and when that conversation starts. So that has just been one of the most encouraging things for me, to see the conversations that this book has started. It just makes me so excited for readers to have more of that and to see more of that, hopefully.
Absolutely. So Christine also had another question, which I loved, which was, she wanted to know more about the title of the book. And she wanted to know if it came from your real life grandmother, because I also remember in the book, I found a quote actually, where Tabitha's grandmother, who's also a Tabitha, says, "Black girls, they sure must die exhausted." Did that come from anyone in your real life, or maybe your real life grandmother?
So no, it did not. For me, the title was an interesting journey, because when I thought about this book and the story, I really wanted a title that spoke into something that almost told its own story, and that rang with a deep truth that almost sounded like it had been said before for generations, So I started with a word that I felt like told its own story itself, which was exhausted. And I think for so many Black women, that word comes up so often. And so I wanted to root and ground the title with that word and make it be something that could go on a journey. Because one of the beautiful things about Black culture is how we use language and how we take words and how we take sometimes things that aren't positive or that haven't been the best for us and morph it into something amazing that is, incredible. It's just such a cultural thing. So I wanted to take this word exhausted on a journey where, it starts as an acknowledgement, like there's weight to these layers that we bear, but yet, progressing to celebration. In spite of all of this, we are such a colorful and joyful people. We're amazing friends and sisters and wives and mothers and lovers and partners and employees and business owners and all of these things that we should celebrate, and then take it to a call to adventure and inspiration, hopefully, where at the end of the story, the word exhausted and the meaning of that title changes into something completely different. So I really loved taking the title on a journey throughout the story of the book, and I hope readers enjoy that as well.
Right, right. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to break things up a bit and play a game.
Sure.
So this game was inspired by the book, but specifically Tabitha. You know, she's a woman who has it all, wants it all, and does it all. Those are like the three things I would say to describe Tabitha.
Yes.
And sometimes doing it all really would just make anyone, it doesn't matter who you are, it would make you exhausted too. So we're going to play, is Tabitha too exhausted?
Oh my
right.
goodness. Okay. I got to call her up. So
Yes, you're going to have to call Tabitha, channel Tabitha right now. And I'm going to list some adulting tasks, and you're going to let me know if Tabitha is too exhausted to do them or she'll get it done. So whether she gets it done by herself or she's going to hire someone to do it, whatever, Tabitha is just going to get it done. So just let us know. Okay?
Okay.
Awesome. Okay. So is Tabitha too exhausted to wash her dishes by hand?
I think that Tabitha, based on the places that I've lived in LA and where Tabitha lives, I think she's a dishwasher.
She's a dishwasher. Okay. Is Tabitha too exhausted to write a to-do list?
Is Tabitha too exhausted to write a to-do list? I think she's probably not. I think she probably has a to-do list.
Definitely. I agree with that one. Is Tabitha too exhausted to visit her Granny Tab?
Never. Oh my goodness. That's Tabitha's favorite person.
I actually loved reading about their relationship and just how close they were. So
thank you. That was such a joy to write. It brought me back to moments with my own grandmother, and I hope that other readers are able to enjoy that in the same way.
Awesome. Yep, love it. So, is Tabitha too exhausted to cook something that doesn't come straight out of a box?
I think it's circumstantial. So in the second book, you'll see some of the reasons that Tabitha will put together a meal. But I think that it depends on the circumstances.
Okay. Is Tabitha too exhausted to work overtime?
I think Tabitha's always working overtime.
I know. She'll just do it. She wants that promotion. She's going to get it done.
Exactly.
Okay. Is Tabitha too exhausted to brunch with her girlfriends?
No, thankfully not. Tabitha is rejuvenated in brunch with her girlfriends and time with her girlfriends. So she makes time for that.
And last one, is Tabitha too exhausted to do her laundry?
Isn't everybody? I don't know if I can speak for Tabitha, but I can speak for me, and I'll say I am. But I think Tabitha probably gets that done in some way. But I think that's a big question mark.
I think Tabitha would do dry cleaning.
She probably has to because she's on air. You're right.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for playing Is Tabitha Too Exhausted with me?
That was a lot of fun.
I'm glad. I know my games are corny as hell, but I can't help it.
No, it's super cute. It's so tied to the story. I love it.
Yay. Awesome. Okay. So Jayne, I want to get into your writing life because your publishing journey has been quite an interesting one to watch. I mean, you self-published Black Girls Must Die Exhausted back in 2018. And then now, you're offered a deal with HarperCollins, Harper Perennial. They're going to publish all 3 books in the series. We're getting Black Girls Must Die Exhausted now in a beautiful new cover, just, polished up, real nice. I mean, you did a great job the first time around. But, just tell us about your publishing journey and this transition.
Sure. So when this began and with the idea, I wrote the manuscript. It was my first time writing fiction, and I had to spend some time figuring out how to go about doing that. And I gave my manuscript to beta readers in my life who I trusted, whose opinions I valued, who were very busy people, but whose opinions I respected. And the responses that came back were so positive that it gave me confidence and courage to push forward. And I was so excited to bring this type of story to readers because I felt like it was something different. It was a little bit novel in certain ways. And having this Black female, contemporary Black female centered in the way that Tabitha is was something that I was looking forward to having as a reader myself. So when I went to Gatekeepers, I wasn't overly optimistic, but I was hopeful. And the responses that I got back were not favorable. And, some of them said they didn't like Tabitha or that they didn't find her relatable, but then they found the white character that's her grandmother. They loved her. And at least, responses like that, where it just made me think, you know what? I think the market is ready for this. And maybe the market is just ahead of where these gatekeepers are. So I would rather let the readers and the market have the last word than stop here. So what I knew I had to do was to make that happen was to put the book out and to self-publish. So I packaged it in the very best way that I could. In my mind, a book is the very best and fanciest accessory that you could hold in your hand because it says a lot about what you're putting into your mind. So I wanted it to be something that reader could feel very proud of holding in their hand, not just from what was on the outside, but also what was on the inside. So putting that package and making sure the story was as polished as I could make it, that was really a labor of love for me. And I put it out to the readers and joined the Bookstagram community on Instagram. And it was just an incredible reception for this book. And readers left reviews and it was a lot of word of mouth and a lot of book clubs that came as this initial community that started to form around this book. And during the pandemic, I had the opportunity to meet with book clubs and my speaking engagements and travel schedule had gotten completely canceled as it did with everyone during the pandemic time. And I made a post and said, if any book club wants me to come to their virtual meeting, I would be happy to join. And so it wound up becoming over 60 book clubs across 5 continents that I met with. We talked about the book. We workshopped the story. And I had so much incredible feedback, and the experience there just let me know what the truth was, that Tabitha was relatable and people loved this story. And it was something that was timely and needed. And it just gave me a second wind and another, a burst of energy. And around the time just after George Floyd, I was in a Black Lives Matter book club that was started, and they asked me to come and they wanted to talk about this book. And it wasn't sponsored by Black Lives Matter. It was people starting their own book clubs with that concept in mind. So they wanted to learn more about Black culture. These are non-Black readers. And I wound up meeting with a lot of groups that really wanted more insight culturally and otherwise into what the Black experience was. And so I was glad that my book was there to help with that. And so one of the readers asked me, well, what do you want next? And I said, I really would like this to go to a major publisher now, that the platform, that I've built, I'm kind of at the end of what I can do. And I really love to have this amplified so that every reader that would like to have this book will be aware of it, that it can land in their hands. And I would say a month later, she introduced me to my agent. She said, I think I can help you. She wound up introducing me to my agent. And maybe less than a month later, Harper Perennial came on board with a pretty unusual 4-book deal for the entire series, plus another book. So I'll be working with them for a while, which I'm ecstatic about because they're an incredible team. And so this is where we are today. So it's definitely been a journey, but it's been propelled by readers all along the way, which is a dream for me. So it's really been a result of the power of community and readers coming together and making this happen.
So standing where you are now, Jayne, and looking back, if you could tell your younger writing self anything, what would it be?
Believe in yourself, think for yourself, and don't give up.
That
That's what I would
sounds
say.
pretty solid to me. I mean, I'm here like soaking in what you were saying, that, the publishers were basically saying, no, she's not relatable, she's not likable, but you pushed ahead anyway.
Yes, it was the gatekeeper. So in our system, you have to go through an agent to even be able to approach publishers. And one of the great things that I started to see after George Floyd was that some publishers would start to say, you know what, we're going to open our submissions for diverse work. We want to see more than what's kind of trickling in this way. So there's so many different ways now that diverse projects and books are coming into publishers. And it's different than the time, even in 2018, when I went about this process. So it's the changes that are happening are really encouraging. There needs to be a lot more, but I hope that we can start to see more of this, where, there's more avenues for a wider range of diverse stories coming in.
Absolutely. So I have another reader question, and this is tied to the fact that you had previously self-published your book now, and now it's being published again. So reader Natasha, whose username is Natasha Cartier on Instagram, she said she read the first two books, With Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, which she absolutely loved, and she would love to know if the new editions will have any different storylines and what's different between the first publication and now the second time around with Harper Perennial.
So the first book, we definitely tried to keep the story intact. A lot of changes that have come were rewriting. So it basically gave me the opportunity to rewrite the book. So rephrasing, making adjustments. It's a different reading experience, it feels like to me. So while the story is the same, I don't know if anybody else rereads books, but I reread my books all the time. So not just the ones I wrote, but my books that are my favorites in my collection. So this is a book that I wrote with the intention that people would be able to reread it and get something different out of it every time they reread it. And so this new edition is an evolved rewrite of the story. So the story would not be different, but the experience of reading should feel different. And in the second book, there are some pretty significant additions. There's new scenes added. There's, another rewrite and adjustments made to the second book as well. So I feel good about people who read or purchased the first version and first edition, purchasing and reading the second edition and the new edition. I think it's a new experience, and I hope that people enjoy it as much as I have.
Yep, absolutely. But on that note, it's the perfect segue into questions about your reading life, because I'm thrilled to hear that you reread books.
Oh, yes.
I reread books. So tell us some of your favorite books to reread, like a book you've reread maybe, say, 2 to 3 times. Tell me some of your favorites.
So a book that I reread probably once a year is The Alchemist. I don't know if you know that book.
Oh, I love that book.
Okay, it's one of my favorite books, and it just reminds me of what it's like to be on a journey, and I find it so encouraging and inspiring. So I like to read that book at least once a year, just kind of a habit. And what else do I enjoy reading? Lately, I have been reading new books. I haven't had a chance to reread anything else on my show.
That's good. So tell us, what was the last book that you finished reading that you'd now recommend to readers?
So the last book that I finished reading recently is In Every Mirror She's Black by Lola Ackerstrom. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly because we have an event today. But it's a really interesting novel based mostly in Sweden. And the author is Nigerian American who relocated to Sweden. And it's a story of 3 women of the diaspora, of the African diaspora. They're Black women, and their lives intersect in Sweden due to connections to this very wealthy, powerful, influential native Swede. And it's so interesting to see how their lives are different, and yet their experience is similar in Sweden as cultural outsiders. And it's sort of like a little trip through Sweden. It feels like I've traveled there now since I've read it, but it was really interesting to see it from a cultural perspective and the perspective of three different characters. So I would recommend that book.
Okay, awesome. And what books are you looking forward to reading in the year ahead?
So there's a book that's my next, it's a pre-pub advanced reader copy, but it's called Yinka, Where Is Your Husband? So it's based in London, and it's a funny book, and it's about Londoner. She's Nigerian culturally, and her family is insistent that she get married, but she's got a very successful life otherwise, and she has to figure out and navigate this path to what she actually wants. So I love those kinds of stories where, women have to define for themselves in the face of cultural and societal pressures telling them otherwise. Women go through this journey of deciding for themselves what they want. So this is a book in that vein that I'm excited about.
Yay! Okay, so we're big supporters here for local indie bookstores, so we ask all our guests on the show, so of course I'm going to ask you to share with our listeners some of your favorite local bookstores.
Sure. So there's Book Soup here in Los Angeles and Mahogany Books in DC. One of my favorites, it's not local for me, but it is an institution in the DC area. And one of my favorite experiences, I think it was back in 2019, they were the first bookstore that I knew of to carry my book. And I hadn't even reached out to them. I didn't know that they were carrying my book. And I was excited to find out, I think it was over Instagram, that they were, because a reader reached out to me and told me they had purchased my book at Mahogany Books. And I was just so thrilled as an independent author that this bookstore even knew that my book was available, let alone was carrying it. So this was one of the first bookstores that ever carried Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. So I will always have great memories and thoughts about that. It was my first book event that I've had in a bookstore was at Mahogany Books. So also, and Charis Books in Atlanta, they were part of my first book tour, my little baby book tour in 2019. So, and there's so many. There's Lit Bar and Tattered Cover and Politics and Prose. There's just so many bookstores to name. So independent bookstores are kind of the lifeblood of what we do as authors. And I'm so excited about getting to visit more as things start to return to normal.
Absolutely. So getting back to Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, I mean, again, this is like your second book birthday, but I'm here for it. How often do you have two book birthdays for your same book? I mean, I think it's awesome. So I know you've been seeing what readers have been saying about your book previously, but, with this republishing, what are you looking forward to? What are your hopes for this new novel, or just maybe just some thoughts you're hoping readers might have with this new edition?
I hope that this starts important conversations that we don't have enough of in broader communities. So I've had the incredible opportunity from my vantage point to see a widely diverse audience for this book. And I think it's so encouraging, especially for me as a Black woman, to see people take the experience of a Black protagonist who aren't Black and learn from it and relate to her experience and relate to this from a human perspective. It just is such a beautiful reminder that there's so much more that we have in common than what would divide us. So I hope that readers get to experience some of that as the book takes on a wider life with a broader reach, and that new conversations start. And I hope to be a part of some of them. And it just lends itself to something inspirational. I mean, ultimately, I wrote this book for it to be inspirational and for it to do something positive in the lives of the people who read it. And I just hope that that continues.
Yay! Jayne, thank you so much for coming on the show and speaking with me. It was just an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been really fantastic.
Yay! Readers, I had so much fun with author Jayne Allen, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank her again for coming and lounging on the couch with us. This week will be a huge publication week for so many authors. There'll literally be a flood of books gracing bookshelves on Tuesday, October 4th, but I'm going to share 26 new and noteworthy titles for you to keep on your radar. If you're looking for some non-fiction books, I highly recommend The Taking of Jemima Boone by Matthew Pearl. Also available this week is Shelf Life by Nadia Wassef. If you're looking for young adult fiction, available this week is Why We Fly by Kimberly Jones and Jilly Siegel, and The Violent Season by Sarah Walters. For readers of literary fiction, out this week is My Monticello by Jocelyn Nicole Johnson and Sankofa by Chibondu Onuzo. For historical fiction readers, out this week is The Book of Magic by Alice Hoffman, Small Pleasures by Claire Chambers, Sister Song by Lucy Holland, and The Lincoln Highway by Amor Tolls. For novels with themes of family and friendship, out this week is Crossroads by Jonathan Franzen, The Swank Hotel by Lucy Corrin, Fight Night by Miriam Toews, The Book of Mother by Violaine Huisman, translated by Leslie Kamhi, We Are Not Like Them by Christine Pride and Joe Piazza, and I Love You, But I've Chosen Darkness by Claire Vay Watkins. For all romance readers, out this week is Not Your Average Hot Guy by Gwenda Bond, The Holiday Swap by Maggie Knox, A Holly Jolly Diwali by Sonia Lally, and Payback's a Witch by Lana Harper. If you're looking for some mysteries, thrillers, and suspense novels, there's Sleepless by Romy Hausman, The Neighbor's Secret by L. Alison Heller, The Last Guest by Tess Little, and Nanny Needed by Georgina Cross. And for our science fiction and fantasy readers, out this week is The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling, and A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Harrow. You can find a list with all these books and their summaries, along with the show notes, over at thereaderscouch.com. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Reader's Couch. You can find out more about the show and submit your questions for our guest by visiting our website, thereaderscouch.com. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Couch Is Booked. If you like the show, please subscribe, share, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Next week, I'll be back with new guests, more books, and some fun games we can play. But until then, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks for listening, and happy reading.